In the Timberline address book, there are companies and there are persons. So if you go to set up company, it will open up the company setup screen. And so every vendor that you've written checks to and every customer you've sent invoices to are already set up as companies. And if you go over to the Use As button over here, it will tell you if that company is an AP vendor, and if so, what their vendor code is. If they're an AR customer, what their customer code is. And if you use the estimating software, if they're set up as an estimating sub. It's, yeah, and it's a big, complicated program for doing detailed takeoffs. So, yeah.
We looked into it, but
like the programs we got.
Yeah. So each company has 4 different addresses. The ones that are most important are the street address, which is where you're going to send paperwork to, and then the remittance address, which is controlled from accounts payable, which is where the checks go to. So only the people that have access to accounts payable can change the remit address. So you can't change the sub's address to your house and then send them a big check and have it show up at your house.
I was thinking, I know I showed her how to set up vendors from PJ. When she was entering a purchase order, if it was a vendor she hadn't used yet, she could set it up from there.
So that means you do have access to accounts payable, because when you set up a vendor, you are also setting up the vendor code and the remittance
Right.
address.
Yeah, but I'd have to ask Brian how much access that she has to the actual AP module. I think there's gonna be some security things set up.
Yep. And the reason I like to go through the company screen is in the middle is this little grid of these are all the people in the address book that are set up as part of this company. So it's possible to go to set up person, and it will open up a person setup screen. And then you can say what company they work for. I think it's easier to just start here, and then you can see, is this person already set up and somebody entered it last name first instead of first name first, or they spelled the name differently than I was about to spell it. You don't accidentally recreate stuff.
First name first.
And so you can just click on the next blank line in the list and add a new name, and now you're creating a new person in the address book that's part of this company.
And anybody can do that?
Yes, and that is controlled by security. So some people limit who can create companies so that you don't accidentally create new companies. But most people don't limit creating people. Because if you need to send an RFI to somebody, you want to be able to create a person. And, well, RFI is going to be a customer, but whatever it is you need to send, we want you to be able to create that contact. Because the way the system works is you have to create the contact first and then pick them as the recipient.
Yeah, and we found that and we had discussed with security for
Right.
it, so not really relevant, I guess, yeah.
And if you click this little icon, it will open up the person setup screen. And it will copy the street address to be the person's address. You can set up their cell phone, set up their email. And this is an important part, especially for folks that have been using accounting but not project management. A lot of people won't have their email address entered or won't have it defaulted to email. So you're going to get really sick of having to do this little pull down every time you try and send somebody something. If it's defaulted to print, you'll have to manually change it to email every time. So ideally, you'll enter the email address and set the default to email, so that when you want to send them something, you just say send and it goes, and you don't have to think about it again.
I may be jumping ahead here.
That's
You
fine.
can also move these, you said, into our Outlook.
Yeah, so that requires an additional piece of software.
Never mind then.
called the Address Explorer, and that will then synchronize the Timberline address book to Outlook. You can set it up to work both ways, but I think the way that it's most effective is just setting it up to go from Timberline to Outlook.
Do we have to have that extra module to transmit those?
No.
Okay.
That's only if, so if you want to have a contact folder inside Outlook, that's here's everybody from my Timberline address book.
Maybe
You know.
it'd be nice to have all that.
Huge thing, I think.
I mean, that way, I mean, she would automatically have my contacts, names and numbers if she needed to call somebody.
Yeah, and I mean, you can also use it in this, if you have a, you know, when you're bringing somebody in with a book of business, if you have a whole bunch of contacts in your Outlook that aren't already in Timberline, we can also use it to dump all of your Outlook contacts into Timberline as a one-time thing.
We also pick them up, sync it with their phones too.
Right, so what I usually do then is tell everybody, edit the things in Timberline, you can sync it to the shared folder, and then each person can copy all of those into their personal Outlook contacts, which then will sync with your phone. So it's not seamless, but it is workable. And I think the Address Explorer is something like $1,500.
Okay.
So it's not cheap, but it's, you know, you can decide if that's worthwhile or not for you guys. And you just need the one license that one person can run and push it out to Outlook, and then everybody can copy the contacts from there.
Yeah. Company.
All right. So once you have all your contacts set up in the address book, let's do RFI. So just like we saw on the other screens, there's all these buttons over on the right-hand side. So you can create a new RFI, find an existing, save what you're working on, press the transmittal button when you're ready to send it. And I set this up when I set up the job that John Allen was my customer, so that every RFI was going to go to him, so his name's pre-filling. You can also set up a CC list if you need to carbon copy people. So subject line. And then the drawing and the spec section, if you have set up a drawing log in Timberline, you can go pick a drawing. Most people end up not doing that because you can just type, you know, sheet A1, detail 3. You can just type something on there. Just if it is in reference to a drawing, you can type what drawing you're talking about. You don't actually have to log it in the drawing log. Same thing with spec section. If you've entered a spec section for the job, it'll give you a drop-down list of here's all your spec sections. Or you can just type in what spec section you're talking about. And so basically the top half of the screen is asking the question. And then the bottom half is going to be after the answer comes back. So you also have the ability to log who asked you the question. So if it's your super, or if it's a sub, or if it's somebody that you're going to have to remember to tell them the answer once you get it back from the architect, you can log that, you know, that's who originally asked me. Sorry, I'm putting that in the wrong line. So in the submitted by, I would have myself, and then in the received from, I'd have who asked me the question. And if you do the pull down lists, it will show you the job contact list for the current job you're on. So right now this is just showing me the 5 people who are already associated with this job. which is sort of a shortcut that if you're using the same people and over on any particular job. And if you do the binoculars, it'll open up the search screen, which then shows you the entire address book. And if George has his own RFI numbering scheme, I can keep track of what his RFI number was here to remind me when I get the answer back. I could say, hey George, the answer to your RFI number 2 is X. So I would enter the question, hit the transmittal button to log the fact that I'm sending out the RFI, hit save to save the transmittal, hit send to email the transmittal, and then that'll send out the email with the transmittal cover sheet and the RFI as a PDF. And you can also do print and print preview to see it on screen, or print to paper if you want to see what the RFI looks like at this point. So we can set up the logo, so we'll get the logo on here, and
I
then,
was just gonna say, I saw that on a screen.
well, he just gave it to me, so I added it to my homepage. But I
Didn't know it was there.
I just noticed.
And we can, again, like everything else, we can customize this form if you want to, or leave it as is. But it's basically a, here's who it's going to, here's the job, here's the question, and then here's a spot to write the response. So it's a real simple form. And then depending on how you get the response back, you know, if they email you an answer, you can cut and paste the text into the box. If they send you back a drawing, you can save it on the shared drive and then link it here. So everywhere in PJ where it says attachments, it's actually a link. So it's not like attaching the file to the email where you're creating a copy of the file. You're actually saying, you know, here is a file with this name in this folder. So if you later put it in a different folder, or if you change the name, or if you delete the file, PJ's not going to be able to find it anymore. So PJ's not actually copying the file, it's just pointing to the file that you tell it to. So if it's stuff you really want to keep, you need to save the file on your shared drive first, and then point PJ to it and say that's the file.
I was gonna say, we need to make a folder for
For that, yeah.
just those documents that
Right.
aren't changed.
Yeah, so what most people do is on your shared drive have a folder for jobs, and then inside that have a folder for each job number. And then inside that you can have subfolders if you need, you know, here's all my RFI files, here's my change order files. You know, some companies have a zillion subfolders and some just have 1 or 2. But then you have a place to put all your files that relate to each job.
Can I link my quotes to my purchase orders then?
Yeah, you can do exactly the same thing. There is an attachment button,
Yeah.
but it's not actually copying the quote.
Right,
It's
yeah.
just saying this
So
is the
I can
quote
do
that
the
goes
same
with it.
thing.
Yeah.
Put a folder for all my quotes, and then put all my quotes in there and link to them.
Yep.
The thing is, make sure you get that folder set up right in the first place.
Yes.
You can't change it.
Because if you change the name later, all the links will break and it will say, I can't find that file.
You do one and do one for the other.
Right.
One for this, one for that.
You know, so if they send you back a sketch, you can save the sketch on the shared drive, link to the sketch, you know, and then say, answer is see attached sketch. As soon as you hit enter or tab after typing in the answer, it fills in the answered by based on who you sent it to. It fills in the returned date, and it gets ready to forward this answer to whoever asked the question. So now if I hit transmittal, it's going to send the RFI and the sketch that I attached to the RFI back to George saying, here's the answer to the question.
Like that.
So I now have the answer linked here to document that, but it's also set up so that, again, it's just a couple clicks to say transmittal to document the fact that I'm sending it, send to generate the email,
And at that point, it copies it and sends a copy
Right.
to George Baker.
Yeah, so if I do transmittal, save, send, it's now creating a transmittal cover sheet, it's sending the RFI, and it's sending the sketch, which in this case is really a Word document called test.
And you can send it to yourself as well. That's right.
And then you can CC yourself. And so when I send that transmittal, and again, it first has to process all those PDFs, and then it will generate the email in Outlook. I'm not online.
And it'll come to Outlook, whoever's logged in, correct?
Right, to whoever you
I'm
sent
sorry.
it to.
It'll show from me.
Right.
Or it'll show from her, or show from whoever's logged in from that terminal.
Yes. So who's ever, sorry, it's Outbox. So whoever pushed the send button, it will send it from your Outlook account. What's the other one? So that was the change order. So George is going to get an email with, here's the RFI form, which is documenting the fact that I asked the question, documenting the fact that the answer is the sketch, and it's a copy of the sketch. So again, it's pretty good at, with a relatively small number of clicks, you can type in the key pieces of information, log the fact that you're sending it out, press the send button, and generate the email. And I was going to go online, but I'm not online. If you Google the word click yes, that's the name of the utility that will make it so you don't get that virus warning. Because if you start using PJ to send out emails, you will get very frustrated very quickly that you have to keep dealing with that virus warning.
So you download it here.
Yep. So there's a paid version and a free version. So you can decide if you guys want to buy the paid version and install it everywhere, or if you want to just put the free version on your laptop so that you don't have to deal with it. And so kind of the way the system is intended to work with all of this stuff is you go into the data entry screens, you enter the data, you press send to send it. Now I have the window open. And then you can print reports later. So if I want to print, oh no. So I just locked myself out of PJ again. So I'm just going to refresh the home page so we can print out the RFI log. But the idea is you are dealing with each individual RFI, and then when you want an RFI log, you say, give me the RFI log. So it's not like you're updating the RFI and then going to update the log to reflect the status. It sort of builds the log on the fly based on what the status is for each RFI. So it will keep track of what are all the RFIs, what is the status of each, what were the dates, so you can build that log anytime you want.
Like this program more and more. It's good for CYA.
Right. So same thing, that transmittal log, if we keep hitting the transmittal button every time we send something, it's just building us a nice little history of here's what we sent and who we sent it to. And then there's also more complex reports, you know, that if you want to say, show me everything I sent to John Allen on job 14014, it can do it by person or, you know, filter it certain ways. Are you guys dealing with submittals? Okay. And then the correspondence log, so that is the tool that lets you create an email and then have the add-in. So the first time you do it, you have to log into Timberline from Outlook. But you can say, this is an important email related to this job. And it won't actually copy the email until you send it, if it's a new email, or until you close it, if it's one you received. But if you get an important email from the owner, or if you're sending an important email and you want to keep track of that, you can do add to log.
But do we have to have that software that links to contacts for that?
No, because this is part of the project management module. Although I think you were talking about Office 2013 earlier. You have to have the pro version of 2013 for that add-in tab to work. So if you have the
2013 professional?
yeah, so if you have the home office version of 2013, it doesn't work.
We got the professional.
Okay. And I locked myself out of PJ, so I need to restart again. So again, the nice thing about the correspondence log is you can then have a log of emails regardless of who received them. You know, so if you got an email and you logged it and then you delete it out of Outlook, you can go in a month later and open that email and reply to it from your computer, even though you were the one that received it. So it allows you to share emails across the project team. Or if, you know, the email went to 3 different people, one person can log it in PJ and then everyone can delete their copy. And there'll be a copy stored in PJ.
Okay, in PJ, you go in, you open it up, you're setting in all your estimating values.
Mm-hmm.
Is there an attachment button there too?
On the enter estimate screen,
Or wherever area that's in?
you can attach to the job to say this is my estimate for the job. I'm not sure you can attach to the estimate. Well, so this is going to link to the transactions, which you aren't going to be easily able to access later. So to accomplish what I think you're trying to get to, we probably want to link it to job setup.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you want to say, here's a copy of my Excel sheet, or here's a copy of my Word document, that's my estimate, that you would link that in job setup. So that you then have that attached and can get to it. Yeah.
I mean, there's somewhere it makes sense that we can attach it, and somewhere that we can always go back and look. If we get an identical job 5 months from now, we can go back and pull it up. Granted,
Yeah.
we can do that in my personal system or their system, but if I'm not around,
I know.
Right.
somebody else can
Yeah.
pull it up.
Right.
So,
Yeah, so there's attachments at the job level, there's attachments to each RFI, attachments to each transmittal. You can have an attachment to the change request. So you can, each document you're creating, you can link things to it that relate just to that.
About my quote, attaching my quote, and even maybe my order acknowledgement to my purchase order, because somebody else needs to look at it, call the vendor on something, then
Right.
they've got that numbers there.
And see, now that you've shown me that, like our RFIs that we do, I mean, our field change orders that we do in the field to get signed, we bring them
You
in.
can attach it there.
Right.
And she does it the right way.
Yep.
She can attach the sign copy.
Right.
Because the
Yeah,
first one won't be a sign saying it's approved. She'll have that
The
one in
backup.
hand.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. How much does the personal version of this cost?
I don't think there is such a thing. Manager name and job cost. So there's a whole bunch where that field is blank, so it's under no PM listed.
Right.
And then you can see there's a whole bunch of different names. And it looks like most jobs are still left open so that they're staying in the list.
Probably,
A lot of the older ones, correct?
well, from day one, probably all the 1999s and 2000, 2001s, we're gonna have to go and close all those
Right.
jobs.
So we can change the grouping if we want and group it by year instead of by project manager. Or this first binoculars here is the find button. So if you go to the first page and then say 14-01-something,
1208 is what I was gonna suggest too, just 'cause it's. But what is one that we have entered a contract number on?
I thought we did.
Where's we going to close them? I like searching by project manager. That way we can.
It's probably not gonna, if we have one into job setup and we override it and went into that field, it's probably not gonna bring that contract amount because it's not pulling from contracts.
Oh,
I'm assuming.
okay.
But 1208 should have revisions to it.
Right, that was what I was thinking, that when you clicked on that, it should have some
You
more.
sit on that list and you can group them any way you want. On that search list, you can
Yeah.
use different groups. So like we could do Mississippi and pull up my project managers.
yep.
That would be the way to do it. 'Cause right now, I mean, I'm the only one, but it won't be a year. I'll have 2 or 3 more. Hopefully.
But yeah.
And so this is showing, these little 3 boxes are called the group tree. So if you turn on the group tree, in this job cost report, it's grouping first by extra. So you can jump to any extra to see the costs associated with that. And then at the grand total, it'll have a grand total for the job as well as a subtotal for each of the extras. And it looks like your names are longer than I'm used to, so it's cutting off the name. So there's going to be some stuff like that where you'd say, oh, you're using more digits or the name is longer. We'll just need to make the fields wider.
Okay.
So it displays everything correctly.
Oh, yeah, I had my estimates in there.
Yeah, so it's showing commitments and actual costs.
The estimates in it though?
That red getting to it.
I know, it's getting to me too.
But yeah, I definitely like to set it up where it's just the south, just pull up just the guys in the south projects. I don't need to see what they're doing up here.
Well, not
And so
only
what-
that, all the stuff that's old.
Well, you have to go back and close all those.
Down to if you enter the estimate at the start of the job, then you can say these are the codes we want to code to
Right.
and track it. It's hard to come in after it's done and then say, how do these numbers relate to these numbers if nobody was trying to make anything match along the way? So I'm not sure if we want to try and retrofit that or not.
Even Marshall would be hard to do that because we use the different cost codes for superintendent versus journeyman. otherwise the rest of it would be okay.
Well, we would have our cost code for our CSR, though, we would have to track that separate. So,
Yep, I saw it when he pulled up that report. I saw the Cahoon Space Rescue.
yeah. So we'd have to have that, plus our, just up to 15030 and not break it down and superintendent.
The personalized homepage report, is that whatever name you set up as the name in security, it will then look for a matching name in the project manager name field. You know, so if you want this person to log in and only see their jobs, you have to enter their name in security the same way you enter it in job
Right,
costs.
So is there a report that you can print out so we know how everyone's names?
I'm the only one that can get this. Or Becky can.
Yeah.
Right, like
Yeah.
that, just so we know
I'll just
exactly how they were
copy,
entered.
Yeah, I'll just copy and paste.
Okay.
There's some in there that need to be deleted.
Yeah, and then so if you want to have each project manager have their own login, they can log in and just see their own jobs. But obviously we have the issue right now that if we're spelling every name differently, we
Right.
can't do a one-to-one match. Or what we can do similar to what we just did and say we want a version, you know, so I went in and said, give me the version of the report for the South. And we just typed in that's anything with an 06 or an 07 or a 20, we want to see that one. So
Yeah, good.
instead of doing it person by person, we could just have a couple versions that say, here's a version for the South, here's a version for the North, here's a version for everything.
Okay.
Or whatever, however you guys want to break it down.
Yeah, let's do that.
For
You
now,
know,
that's our best option.
yeah, I mean, in general, you don't want to have to call me all the time to change it, so we want to come up with a system where we can say, here's how the groupings work, and then you can manage it over time.
Mhm.
But while we're figuring it out, we can make as many versions as we need.
I mean, I
And
think that's the south, north, and everything will work, because it's south, up north, and everything.
And so what I did is on your Timberline drive, so on your S drive, in the 9.5 folder under Documents is the Sage desktop. So templates are the configuration files. So I put mine from my computer, which was called Project Manager Tom. I created a copy of it and I named it Brian because you were the person logged in. And the advantage to having these out on the S drive is if you change machines, if your laptop gets run over, these files all live on the S drive and you can just point to the new file. So, you know, we can go in here and create a copy and then name it for Scott. And then on your machine, you can go in and say File, Open Configuration. Go out to the Templates folder, pick your name. And I'll give you a little cheat sheet for this. Because the other trick is then to go in and say,
So that means each person's desktop's gonna have to be
E-
updated.
each
Yeah.
person will have their own configuration file, and so you need to say, this is the file with my name, and then you have to come in and press this button to say current, to say, and the one I just loaded is the one I want to load every time.
Okay.
And then we'll have the 1 or 2 or 3 versions of the homepage report template that everybody will share. But the advantage of doing it this way is it's on the server, you can back it up, and it's real easy to just, no, those are the reports. that you can just create copies and give them names, and then everybody knows to load the one with their name. Because if you go open Sage Desktop on your own machine, it's going to open with nothing loaded. You know, it will say, here's 0 shortcuts, and here's Sage's web page. And you're going to say, well, this is worthless. Which is the other reason why most people don't use desktop, because it doesn't have anything there. And so this homepage isn't going to be perfect for you guys, but it's a starting place for you to at least see the jobs and then be able to start looking at the more detailed reports and figure out which ones work, which ones don't, and what you want to change.
So then, those names are coming from when you set up the job and you put in the project manager's name?
Yep.
Okay. I wondered how Josh was in there and
Right,
Kaylin.
so we're always, right.
Yeah, so if you go into
Yep,
job cost, job setup,
okay. And we have to figure out how we wanna be consistent with that. We'll probably just go with exactly how they're
Unless we
using
can
it.
do a numbering system, but do people do numbering systems for project managers, or, you know, or is the numbering, or name?
if you want a pull-down list, you can create an AP approval list and put all your project manager names there, and then come to the AP tab, and on this authorization, it will give you a list. And it looks like that's not set up right now. But
That's probably the best way to be
it's kind of the
consistent.
easiest way to force you to be consistent.
Yeah.
The downside is you don't get the name right here on the first tab. But that's okay.
Whereas it's on the AP.
So
we
AP
have to
and
go there
GL.
anyway.
Go to the authorization, and then if you set up your list of AP authorizers, you can just have your list of all your project managers. And then you're picking a name out of the list rather than typing something in.
That,
And then I'll change the homepage report to say, don't look at this name,
Yeah,
look
Keep
at
pulling from
this
the other
name.
one.
So once you have some data in there, I can switch the report over to sort the other way.
okay.
but new setup that we'll have to do from job
Right,
setup.
and then we'll have to figure out for her if she's gonna set up in project management, if that is available there or not. And if not, we may just have to still do it here.
You still have to do it you can do it on the fly in PJ, but then it looks like you wanna continue to upgrade.
Well, that's all I'm getting at, we gotta know how much she can do and then what Sue
Mhm.
still has to do on this end.
Right, all this you can go and finish it down there, yeah. She'll be able to add job costs. And she logs in, she has a job cost set up,
Oh, okay.
she can finish it down there herself, too.
Well, if she's gonna have job costs, she might as well just set it up in job costs.
But I'll be, yeah, we'll be setting them up in both ways, depending on where we're at.
Just have to make sure.
Well, the way I understood it, you were only getting project management, so,
Yeah, I think I have to go and check the logging.
okay.
I think we have to, remember we couldn't do that? If we don't have job costs set up and do a login, we're not to be able to set it up from PJ, checking that box. I think that's what we-
Right.
Yeah, that was an issue, so that's why I wanna have her allowed to be able to do job cost setup.
Okay.
Yeah, but she doesn't enter the
Yeah.
now, so.
Yeah, but we were trying to get it to where everything could be entered from project management. Because we only have one job cost module.
It's just that
If she
when
has
she's
it open,
on-
nobody else can.
We'll just set a timer, she's gonna use it on Tuesday,
Okay.
and this time and that time, and know that she's using it, and then we'll have to do ours on a different
Right.
time schedule.
That was our only concern, was only having the one module.
Yeah.
Yeah. We were trying to get you guys to be able to do everything through PJ as much as possible.
That's not
Right.
possible.
Not 100%.
Right. Yeah, because Because if we create a new fake job, and I can save it in PJ and then delete it, and I'll pretend like I'm about to set it up in job costs, but not actually do it.
When nobody's up, or after 5 o'clock, before 5 o'clock.
That's not always the case around here.
No, that's not it, that might be an issue.
Well,
But, no, Saturdays, Sundays,
Pretty
well,
much.
sometimes Saturdays I'm wrong.
But if you're gonna have job costs, then I will give you the steps and teach you how to completely set the job up from there.
Yeah, so from PJ, you can create it in job costs, but these are the only fields you get.
Okay, and that's the first project manager. That's right, she won't have the APG,
Right.
tabs and all that other stuff, so, yeah.
And so I would recommend we set the default to use contracts and then set billing to allow quick bill.
Now, in this case scenario, yeah.
And then that way you have the option when you're ready to switch, you can switch.
I think that's a good idea.
Come on. I'm not trying to open it again. I just want to see the one that's open. So we can. So if we default to use contracts. Set to contracts, which allows you to do contracts, but you can still continue to do quick bill in the meantime.
Yeah, okay.
And then you can, so you can start to switch over.
Then the billings, what was one is for the half.
You have to make sure that all your cost-based markups are set up to use the cost-based invoice, so that everything shows up. And so kind of the poor man's cost-based billing is set it up as a contract billing, run your job cost report to know, so that you know what the number is, and then type in the number you want to bill.
Yeah, that's what we would be doing.
That's the word I was trying to think of before, the poor man's cost-based billing.
And
So that's what I've done with other contractors, is it's not literally a cost-based billing where everything just passes straight through and you have no control. It's you run a report that tells you what, this is what all your costs are, this is how much you should bill based on your labor rates, and then you know, it requires that extra step of typing those numbers in, but it gives you that control point.
more control there. I like that. Then we can get our backup, as our backup to our invoice.
Right, so that you can use that report as your backup and then make sure those numbers match.
So is there any, there was nothing set up like a TM billing?
Yeah, there are, but they're all
They're all
cost-based.
cost-based. So they were pulling it.
So that might be a great option, but the thing you have to do is set up your billing rates for every labor code. And so if you don't have those set up, then your billing rates for your labor won't be where you need them to be.
have to manually enter
Right,
And
then you have to
so-
manually redo everything.
Yeah, that looks sort of funny on me. And I remember that was the tough thing way in the beginning, 'cause that's all we only had until it came out with Quick Bill, was
Right.
contract.
Yeah, so that's why a lot of people don't use the cost base, is because they don't want to take the time to get the labor rates set up.
So is there an invoice format you can set up with T&M that's not, doesn't have the cost-based one?
Yeah, so we can either use the little invoice builder here.
Remember this, full information you want to pull over.
Or if you want something with the logo, I can build a template in Crystal Reports, and then we can just say use the template.
I would, right now we're taking the template and printing it out and then printing it onto our template.
Right.
You can actually build something and tie it together.
Yeah, so I can build it in Crystal, and then we check the use custom invoice design, and we'll say here's the Crystal template. And then when you go into the billing module and say here's the dollars to bill, it will print it onto your form with your logo, and they'll just all be there.
Yep, we're gonna have, that'll be get a nice new logo on there.
So it seems like we kind of went through all the stuff as a group that we need to go through as a group. I'd like to spend a few more minutes sort of setting things up to help with customization, so that I can sort of pre-name the templates and tell the system to use the templates, so that I can just email you a file and tell you where to save it on your system.
Our subcontract agreement now, once you, how you showed us how to populate that, that's something you'll be able to create for us too.
Yeah. Yeah, and so that's all.
So all we need to do is give you the Word document.
Right.
And you'll be able to go in there. Cause that's what we want to be able to use the system where we can just take all that, we don't have to go and do over here and go into Word, do it.
Right.
Populate
Right.
it all in the
Does it
program.
right here.
Yep.
When I call her, I need a deal for subcontract, and all the information, she goes in, does it, with Frank, and mails it. Emails the bill right through the program.
Right.
Now, when you're talking about tying it to job talking about the T&M and tying it to crafts or whatever, that's what you were talking about, right? Instead of going in and adding in the percentage or whatever, on your T&M, it would get the rates or.
Right, so we'll have to set something up. So we'll have to talk a little bit more about how many different classifications there are, so how many different rates we need. Or if you already have it in a table in Excel, then I can look at that and figure out what's the best way to stick that information somewhere in Timberline, so that when we print, we get the number we want.
I was working on building a sheet for, we need to build, I got 3 sheets built, one for Texas, Mississippi, one for Louisiana.
Okay.
But they'll have one for like some of their clients, and then they'll have one for other clients. and
Once
they'll
we
have
get
for
one format
Minnesota.
set up, we can go and use that format, so that can.
Right.
Go in and change what we need to change
And
for a different client.
right. So the other thing I've done for the poor man's T&M is just do a save as and say, this is my poor man's T&M for this client, and then I type in these are the rates I charge this client. And so when you print the invoices for 2 different clients, they look the same, but they're using different rates.
That's what we need.
And
What
so
we need is-
what cost-based billing requires you to do is go in and set up all those rates ahead of time.
Right.
But doing it in a report, kind of the cheater way, is
And then
you
don't
kind.
set the person up correctly, then you gotta
Eh.
tie it out
Right, so if you code it to the wrong code, then it's
You
not
have
billing
to-
out at the
right.
right rate.
You have to go in there, manually go in there and adjust it, and then if it doesn't, I remember doing that right in the beginning.
Yeah.
And our invoices were all funny looking and all.
So depending on how many different rates we want, we can look at, is it worth it to go in and do all that setup and do it once and we're done? Or is it easier to say, we're going to create a couple versions, either based on the state or based on the customer. And it won't be true T&M billing, but it'll act like T&M billing.
So, in that case scenario, if I'm understanding it right, you still have to input names, or no, you're just pulling it, you're just still inputting the dollar amount in there, or the amount of man hours?
Yeah, so like what I've done for general contractors is superintendents charge to this cost code.
Right.
So any labor hours in this cost code bill out at this many dollars per hour. Any labor hours in this cost code bill out at this many dollars per hour. If you guys are having crews where there multiple people are charging to the same cost code, but they have different classifications,
Mm-hmm.
we'll then need to go a step deeper and look over into the payroll data and say, who are the people that charged to this cost code this week? What classification are they? And say, we have
That's the way to do it.
we have 40 hours at this classification, 80 hours at this classification, 20 hours at this classification, and we know how much to bill for each classification, and we do the math that way.
If it goes back to the payroll, I think that'd be the way to do it.
Right now, I can bring you a sample, what we're doing is an Excel spreadsheet, taking the field report, that's how we tie out to our cost transaction, make sure we tie out with our payroll, make sure we're billing out the guys the right way, the correct billing,
Mhm.
and then we're just making a quick bill invoice saying labor, and then
Right.
whatever the amount is off of there, and that's, but you're saying that we can set up a format that would calculate that, and then we could, or,
Yeah, so it's kind of the same issue as setting up cost-based billing is if we can predict what all the rates are going to be, let's save them ahead of time and we'll do all the math automatically. If we're not sure that we can predict all the rates, then I need to give you all the raw materials and you need to verify that all the rates are correct.
each customer has their own rates.
So, we'll probably start with, here's how many hours were worked in each classification so that you guys can manually verify and then see if we have the rate schedules right or not. Or we may end up saying there's so many rates, we might as well stick it all into cost-based billing and do real cost-based billing instead of poor man's cost-based billing.
Still a good reconciliation, so that it'd be all on the invoice, you would just print out a sample invoice, tie it out, make sure that everything's tied out.
Right, so you'd have the invoice that says labor is X dollars, and then you'd have a backup report that says here's how many hours and here's who worked them and here's the rate we're billing them out at.
That's it.
That's it, but I think there's a lot of work to
Yeah.
that up front. Because
There's a
every
lot of setup
client
to get
has
there.
Different rates and,
And I'm gonna try to keep the states, I'm gonna try to do it by states. Mississippi says, Louisiana's against Texas says. Doesn't matter the client
Each
is in.
Not client based.
Yeah, I don't wanna get into client based. I wanna get into state based.
Right.
Because then it's easier to justify.
Right, that's what we charge in the state, that's
This
the way it
what
is.
We cut somebody a deal, do we have to change this and change
Yeah.
that? Get good rates now, like,
okay, so you're gonna, work
So
out
let
where
me-
we can all log in to that and have that desktop on our screens. You're just saving that as a
Yes.
drive and we have to learn how to open that up.
Right, so
y'all got 2 weeks.
you can either now decide that you know enough that you can start setting everybody up, or you can call me and I can walk you through setting everybody up.
Yeah, we need to make sure it's all, try to get as much as we can.
Because you guys don't,
Kicking you off.
if you're paying me by the hour, you don't want to have to pay me for everything. So I'll help you as much as the things that you need my help with, I'll definitely do, and where you want my help, I'll help you, but I'll also
Do
try
you
and
have a
help you where
understanding
you can start to do it yourself.
Do you have an understanding on how to get us all to have the desktop
Uh,
from the
If you
SRA?
record that. If actually have a.
You know,
date
and that's
sheet.
also easy to do a go-to meeting. Go to somebody's desk who's not set up and do a 10-minute go-to meeting of here's, you know, and I can email you a cheat sheet of here's the 5 things you need to do for each person.
No, the part where we were setting up the desktop, taking that file folder, my name, and then saving it, and then changing my name, and then we were gonna
I
upload it.
think it was recorded.
Yeah.
Stop
Yeah.
start.
Maybe walk through maybe.
What, one more time?
Okay, so as far as making
Going into
changes
the
to
extra
my purchase
under
order
the-
form and then showing me how to have multiple jobs and still have all the job information on it, are you gonna do that and send me the forms, the templates, or?
Yes. So what I want to do right now is see, I can listen and type at the same time. I can't talk and type at the same time. So what I usually do is keep all the reports in one place because it's easy to find things later. And I'll put an exclamation so that it sorts at the front, and then put your company name. And then what I'm going to do is tell job cost that every time you print a purchase order, use this template. Right now it's the same old template that you're used to, but I can now email you that and tell you to drop it on your S drive, and then next time you print, it'll be updated. And that's okay if you don't understand what I'm saying. You don't
Well,
need to understand.
Not
I'll tell you what
quite,
to do.
have you seen the purchase order that I'm currently using? Cause we've created one, and I need it to be tweaked a little more, basically.
I went into Crystal Reports and played around.
Okay.
And came up with something. But it probably needs to be tweaked. It has to be tweaked. It doesn't probably have to be
No, it
tweaked.
really needs to be.
tweaked.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
needed to pull in that extra information, and then we needed to be able to, still give the breakdown job information when we are ordering for more than one job. You know, so basically you've told me it can do everything I want it to, but now before you leave, I wanna know how am I supposed to get to that?
You have to email me the details of exactly what you
Okay.
want
Yeah.
so that I can do it, and
Okay.
then I'm going to email you back the file and tell you where to put it.
Perfect.
You guys don't all have to watch me do this, but
We're done.